Welcome to Estate Planning with Bernard Law.
Welcome to Estate Planning with Bernard Law. Daniel Bernard works with clients across Florida and New York to make estate planning simple, personal, and effective, from drafting wills and trusts to keeping families out of probate court. I'm your host, Sophia Morales, and today's episode is the beneficiary mistakes that could cost your family and how to avoid them. Welcome back, Daniel.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me again.
You know, I'm looking forward to digging into this because every time I'm faced with a beneficiary designation, it's like, oh, geez, I haven't thought about this. And then it's like, well, what do I do? What exactly is a beneficiary designation and how does it work on things like bank and retirement accounts?
Sure. So a beneficiary designation is just you telling the bank, financial institution, insurance company, whomever that is, you're telling them this is who should get this account when I pass away. So typically when we're setting up these accounts, they might ask us, who would you want the beneficiary to be? A lot of times that's our spouse, and that's fine. And if it's a joint account, it might be someone else. And that's usually where we get into trouble, is if it's someone else.
Oh, interesting. How do we get into trouble if it's someone else?
So we usually can remember to make our spouse the beneficiary, but then there's something called a contingent beneficiary. That's if you have your primary beneficiary, again, typically your spouse, and then you have your contingent beneficiaries, typically your children if you have children. And that's where we can get into trouble sometimes because we might remember to have that primary beneficiary, but we don't always have those contingent beneficiaries on there. And when you don't have a contingent beneficiary and your primary beneficiary is no longer with us, what happens is that beautiful non-probate asset that was going to just pass directly to your beneficiaries as easy as possible now has to go through the probate process of we have to probate your will in the surrogate's court, wait 6, 7, 8 months for somebody appointed as executor, then we can collect that account. So it can cause the collection of that account to be delayed by 6, 7, 8 months or more sometimes, which is going to provide possibly some liquidity issues for your kids if they can't access your accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. So why do so many people think that just listing beneficiaries is a substitute for a full-on estate plan?
So I get this question often in my office. People tell me, okay, so I went to the bank. My bank had a PanDeath account. I called E-Trade. I called Charles Schwab. I called all those people. I got my beneficiary and I got my contingent beneficiaries. I'm rock solid. And then I say, well, do you have a house? I have a house. How do that's why you need a trust. No, I'll just transfer my house to my kids. That's not necessarily ideal, right? Because now you're gifting it to them. Now they have ownership in your property. So there's negative tax consequences there. If you want to sell the property, now you need their consent. Now maybe they have to pay some taxes on it. So not necessarily ideal to add your kids as a beneficiary on your deed, because it's just you're giving up some control.
You don't know if life is going to happen to one of those kids. They could get in a wreck or be found at fault or something, and now they're coming after the house you're living in because your kid's name's on it.
Exactly. And you reserve a life. They tell me, oh, I'm going to reserve a life estate for myself. And that agreed that if everything stays beautiful in your life, nothing goes sideways, that can work, but it's just not the ideal. And unfortunately, when you're a lawyer, all you deal with is the not ideal. Is big. That's how people get to your office, is something went wrong within the estate plan. So that's a lot of times what we see is kids that they don't necessarily get along with mom and dad anymore, or they don't agree with mom and dad selling the house, or they have their own motives, whatever, and now they're just refusing to do anything. So that's why the beneficiaries, when it comes to houses, beneficiaries aren't going to work. You really need to have an estate plan in place. But the beneficiaries certainly can work for everything else, with the caveat that you want everyone to get those assets directly, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and if you're fairly young, what are some of the risks of naming your kids as direct beneficiaries?
Exactly. So If your kids are in their 40s or 50s or 30s, you might feel comfortable with them having a few $100,000 inherited or millions of dollars, whatever it is. You might feel comfortable with them receiving that inheritance, and they're not going to waste it if you feel like it would be wasted, right? But when we have minors, we have one problem is anyone under 18, right? The circuit court is going to want to hold that share for them. We don't just let 12-year-olds inherit millions of dollars from insurance companies. So the court wants to hold that share for them, and the court wants to appoint someone to manage that money for them. So you could lose some of the, your kid has someone that you don't know, that you didn't pick, managing the funds for them. That's not ideal. And then if they're 18, they can be a direct beneficiary. But I know if I received $100,000 at 18, I don't think I would still have it because, and not because I was irresponsible, but I was obsessed with Quiznos when I was 20 years old. I would have invested in a Quiznos. There's no Quiznos anymore. So sometimes we just don't make the best, business decisions when we're younger. It's not necessarily that we're going to go out and buy, 3 Ferraris. It could just be something we thought was a good idea. It just wasn't a good idea at 20. So having your kids as direct beneficiary, not always the best idea. The better idea would be you can have a trust be the beneficiary, have that money go into a trust for their benefit, and that can protect the money for, that trust is totally customizable. Protect it as long as you want to protect it to a certain age or even for the rest of their lives.
Well, and I know, having filled out some beneficiary forms in my life, they don't give you an infinite space to put in beneficiaries, or if this, then that kind of situations. How can, like, listing one child as a beneficiary and then trusting them to share backfire?
Oh yeah, I see this pretty often too. People tell me, "Oh no, I'm just going to make my oldest the beneficiary of everything. He'll take care of everybody else." I'm sure your oldest will take care of everyone else. But the problem is they're not legally obligated to do it. So if I'm named the direct beneficiary on my parents' bank account, in the eyes of the bank, in the eyes of the law, that's 100% my bank account. When my parents pass away, I don't have to share it with any siblings. So the problem can be that sometimes we get this one sibling is, oh, I was the direct beneficiary of that bank account, and they just keep it for themselves. They don't have to share it.
Yeah.
Another problem could be they don't even tell your other kids about the bank account because they know it'll just cause problems. So they keep it to themselves, and your plan isn't necessarily going to work that way because it involves trusting other people. And unfortunately, families don't always get along, and money does ugly things to people. So the better thing is just name anyone you want to be a beneficiary. Name them as the beneficiary. Don't rely on someone else to make them a beneficiary for you.
Well, yeah, and I think it probably complicates the beneficiary's tax situation as well. If they're getting all this money and then finding a way to get it to the siblings in a tax effective way, that can be a real headache as well.
Exactly, and it depends on the asset. So if it was a tax deferred account like an IRA or a 401k, they may want to liquidate that account and pay all of the tax at one time. And to your point, if it's the beneficiary that's in the highest tax bracket, even if they tell everyone, okay, listen, I'm paying everyone after taxes, that could be everyone got less because this person was in a really high bracket, right? Or it could just be someone, oh, I would have taken the account tax deferred, and you completely liquidated the entire account because our inherited IRAs, you don't have to take it all out right away. You have 10 years under the Secure Act to take that money out. So you want to have every beneficiary be able to control how they take that asset, not just have the one beneficiary deciding for everyone.
Exactly. Are there other tax issues families should watch out for when they're dealing with, especially retirement accounts?
So I could probably do 7 podcasts just on the Secure Act, but just in 1 minute, the Secure Act, this was a bipartisan. This was passed during the first Trump administration, and then the Biden administration passed Secure Act 2.0. And as much as we think everyone in Washington doesn't get along with anyone, this was 100% everyone, Republicans, Democrats, everyone voted for this, the Secure
Hmm.
Act. The biggest thing all people know about the retirement accounts is you may have inherited a retirement account from your parents, an IRA, 401k, and there used to be this stretch provision that if I inherited an IRA from my parents, I don't have to start taking out distributions until I get to 70 years old and I've started taking my requirement distributions. It allowed these accounts to really grow because it grew during my parents' life. Now it's growing even more during my life until I get to 70 and deferring all that tax, right?
Yeah, the government's gone, where, how do we get ours?
How do we get the tax? And
Yeah,
it was allowing people to recognize the tax when they're in the lowest brackets, when they're retired at 70 years old.
yeah,
Now you have to, if you under the Secure Act, that account has to be liquidated within 10 years. So what happens is you're recognizing that tax within the 10-year period of your parents passing away. And typically now you have to recognize that tax at a much higher bracket because you may not be
retired quite
retired.
yet.
So that would be the one tax thing people want to be cognizant of. There's nothing you can really do about it. It's just you should know about it ahead of time that that IRA is going to need to be paid out within 10 years. So if you're deciding between taking money out of your IRA and I don't want to pay the tax on it now, I'll take it out of something else. That something else you're taking out of is it could be very likely your kids will pay no tax when they use that asset, and they're going to pay more tax to use your IRA. So you might be better off taking money out of your IRA. But that's not an estate planning question. I would run that by your financial advisor and your accountant. Just be cognizant of the stretch provision went away would be the my
Yeah,
estate planning advice.
exactly. Well, and thinking about the strategy of I'm just going to designate beneficiaries on every account out there. Um, have you seen any horror stories where someone tried to do this and then, I'm giving this IRA to one kid and this IRA to another kid, and then they end up using one and not the other and disinheriting someone?
I had that happen with a bank account. So dad had one bank account earmarked for one daughter, one bank account earmarked for the other daughter. Then the real contention came in that he used the bank account he moved in with daughter A, and he used daughter B's earmarked bank account to renovate daughter A's house to
Oh,
make it comfortable for him.
no.
So then daughter A gets a renovated house and a bank account, and daughter B got a much smaller bank account. So
Yeah.
that can be a problem, right? When you're trying to split it that way. The better way to do everything is the best way, in my opinion, is have a trust be the beneficiary of all of your accounts because that trust is going to be easier for us to amend than updating your beneficiaries continuously, most likely. And the trust, we can do equalization things, right? So we can say in the trust context, we can say everything drops into this big pool, and then we equalize everything with everyone. So we don't have to worry about market fluctuations. We don't have to worry about where you spent the money. I spent from this account, that account. Everyone's being treated equal at the end. Everyone's getting at the end. We don't have to worry about beneficiaries passing away, and because the trust is not going to pass away, the trust will collect that account, and then the trust can pay it to the contingent beneficiaries under the trust. A lot of times, people have their primary beneficiaries, their spouse, contingent beneficiaries, their kids. What happens if one of their kids predeceases them? God forbid. You want that to go to your grandkids. That might not be designated on there. It might be your other kids are sharing it, and you got the grandkids kind of left out in the dark.
Mm.
Also, you just lost a child. Do you really want to? Is beneficiary designations top of mind at that point?
Oh,
Absolutely
no.
not. So the trust is always going to be better for you because we've handled all of these really bad contingencies. Um, I have to be a very negative, pessimistic person when I do estate planning because I have to think of every bad thing that could happen and try to plan for it. So, in the
Well,
context
yeah.
of a trust, you already have someone that thought of every bad thing they could think of that could happen and plan for it. So most likely, and these are my favorite things I can tell clients. They call me, this happened. I need to update my plan, and I can tell them actually you don't have to update it. We
You're
took care
covered.
of that contingency. No need to update it. No need to give me any more money, which is the part they like even better, right? And you're good to go.
I
And
love that. I love that because we always think we have more time to change things later. And, there are scenarios where you're traveling together with your family someplace, and God help you, you may not have time to update your beneficiaries when you lose somebody in that crash and you're extremely ill and maybe you die a few days later. That, life does weird things.
Also, I've unfortunately had to visit many people in hospitals where they just figure out, oh, I never did an estate plan. Let me put something in place now.
Quick.
I'm
Yeah.
You don't want to see me at your on your in your hospital bed. I know I'm a nice guy. I know I have funny jokes every once in a while, but you don't want to see me. You want to spend that time with
Yeah,
your
not even
family,
if you bring flowers. I'm
spend that
sorry.
time with your loved ones. Yeah, I'm inconsiderate. I'm not going to bring you a balloon. I'm just going to show up with all these estate planning documents. So you want to do this stuff ahead of time. It's much easier to deal with this stuff when you're healthy than when it feels real, when you're in that hospital bed. And your kids don't want to see me at the hospital either. They want to spend the
Yeah.
time with you. So I know I'm gonna still be having to go to hospitals, just the nature of this business. But I can tell you, not one person's ever been happy to see me there. They've
Yeah.
been happy to see me leave, but that's about it.
That's a whole different
Yeah,
story.
that's a different story.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this information with us today. This has been really insightful.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you.
And thanks for joining us on Estate Planning with Bernard Law. To connect with Daniel or to learn more about protecting your family's future, visit BernardEstatePlan.com, and remember to like, subscribe, and review the show. And make sure to share this with someone you care about.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.